Then I took a smidge and applied it down there.
This one's wife. False light? What the fuck is that, this one's wife? Hello, I'm hgtudor. Now, valuable viewers, if I was to say to you the word light, what do you think of? Well, some of you might think that that's the opposite of heavy. So you might think light as a feather or a light touch. You may also consider that it relates to light that enables you to see. After all, light is broken down for the purposes of light waves into 7 categories. You have radio waves, microwaves, infrared, visible light, ultraviolet light, X-rays, and gamma rays. So that's a technical aspect of light. If we were to venture into the field of interior design, they talk about light as being ambient light, task light, and accent light, different lighting settings that would be utilized, for instance, in a home or workspace. We then also have sunlight, that light which comes from that great big burning star up there in the firmament that enables beautiful sunsets and sunrises, that makes the day much fairer when the sun is shining, and may well give you a tan in appropriate circumstances. We might talk about a bright light. For instance, you could reference somebody to being a bright light in terms of being intelligent, or you might refer to a light that is so bright that you're not able to look into it. You may refer to a leading light to demonstrate that somebody is prominent, that they are at the top of their field. You may make reference to highlight. For instance, you might have a highlight in your hair, or talk about watching the highlights of a sporting event whereby the best bits have been taken out and condensed into a package to avoid the boring bits. There's also the concept of bad light. Apparently this is something that terrifies cricketers, whereby if there is bad light, they go, "Oh no, bad light," and they have to go running back to the pavilion where they can safely eat cucumber sandwiches. And then we have false light, which of course is to show somebody in a particular way which isn't accurate. You presented the facts in a false light. And it would appear that this one's wife has seized upon the concept of false light. How so? Well, as I explained in an earlier video about the Sussexes going on the law path in order to utilise litigation and the threat of legal proceedings to get their way to stifle criticism, Queer Lips of Truth, writing on X, stated as follows: Prince Harry and this one's wife are coming for the US press for what they call an unfair and false presentation of them. The word used is false light. And I think they meant to say the words used, but false light. So this, once again, is the manifestation of the victim mentality of this one's wife and Harry. Hitherto, it was stated that they would be moving away from this victim narrative, moving away from the whining and the complaining. But it would appear, and it's no surprise, is it, that that hasn't held true. The fact is that, viewed through the distortion field, this one's wife sees any criticism of her as her being portrayed in a false light. Notwithstanding the fact that there is evidence that demonstrates that that view of her is well formed, that isn't how it's seen by her. And it never will be. This is the problem that you have when you're dealing with the narcissist. The unaware narcissist simply is pathologically incapable of accepting that they are in the wrong in a genuine way, that they are legitimately criticised, that your comment about them is appropriate. An aware narcissist may well recognise the force in what you're saying, but will not admit it, because that would amount to a transference of power, and the aware narcissist cannot have that. This one's wife, as an unaware narcissist, sees any form of criticism of her, irrespective of the strength of the evidence that supports it, as entirely illegitimate, that it has no foundation, and therefore her narcissism then tells her that she is being portrayed in a false light. This then motivates her to need to tackle this threat to control, because the presentation of her in this supposed false light amounts to her threat to control. So her narcissism is then called into action to address this. This might be, for instance, in confronting somebody. It might be by complaining about the individual to somebody else, smearing them in effect. It could be by withdrawing from the circumstances or staying in a situation of withdrawal. But it would appear now that whenever this one's wife sees commentary about her, reads criticisms of her, hears legitimate disapproval of her behaviour, as that passes through the distortion field of her narcissism tells her they are portraying you in a false light. This is an unfair and false presentation of you. Accordingly, with this concept of false light, this one's wife is now motivated to do something about it by looking to assert control directly through the institution of legal proceedings. That her narcissism is encouraging her, as a consequence of the frequency of these criticisms, to do something about it directly through legal process. It doesn't matter that she may not have a leg to stand on, because in her world, she believes that she has. I should imagine that if she goes to the relevant law firm, sue, grab it and run, or how we fuck them over, then those law firms may well turn around and say to her, you don't really have the basis of a claim here. When a lawyer says that to this one's wife, they may as well have been speaking Mandarin for all of the understanding that she will have of what has just been said to her. This is why certain narcissists fire their lawyers, because the lawyer has told them how it actually is. But that's not what the narcissist wants to hear. So they dispense with that lawyer and go and find one that they can manipulate more successfully, i.e., the tail wags the dog. Thus, those of you who have been involved with narcissists in litigation may well have come across this situation of the narcissist repeatedly shifting lawyer. A robust lawyer would point out to this one's wife, this is legitimate comment, it's fair comment, it's actually based on the facts. Although you may not like it, that doesn't give you the basis of a legal case. This one's wife can't understand why a lawyer would say that to her. It's plain as day. Look, they're telling lies about me. Says the lawyer. Not really lies. There is evidence that supports what this YouTuber or this US reporter has stated about you. You don't know what you're talking about, yells this one's wife. It's clearly a lie. That didn't happen. Well, the evidence says that it does. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. You're useless. I'll go and find somebody else. You see, what happens is she is incapable of suddenly going, yes, I see what you mean, actually. The evidence is against me. Because all of the time, her narcissism is interpreting that evidence as being false. Because it can't let her accept it. Because if she accepted its legitimacy, that means the criticism is valid. And if the criticism is valid, that means there's been a threat to her control, that it has got through the defense of the narcissism. And that cannot happen. That just simply cannot happen. And therefore, what her narcissism must do is always make it so that she is motivated to reject any criticism of her, thus preserving the freedom of control. That it can't let them land a blow on her And this means that no matter how strong the evidence is, no matter how compelling it is, no matter how forthright the lawyer might be in explaining this to her, she won't accept it. And she will keep insisting that action is taken because they are wrong and she is right. They are lying, she's telling the truth. They are smearing me, I'm the victim. This is why it becomes so frustrating dealing with a narcissist, because the narcissist is incapable of accepting what the evidence says, because their distortion field won't allow them to do it. And thus, for this one's wife, it has created this concept of her now being seen in a false light, which gives her the motivation to then reject these criticisms of her through this concept of false light. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.